So I wanted to talk about, again, my high school students. So they're mostly in 9th and 10th grade. I teach at least 2 or 3 classes that involve a lot of reading and writing. One's a literature and comp class, which is definitely reading and writing, and in our language development class, for the level 3 students, we have not been focusing as much on just straight grammar, but a lot of reading and writing as well. So I want to talk about those two groups. The first, the literature and comp, is a level 2 class, level 2 proficiency, and the language development 3 is a level 3. And in both those classes, we've been doing a lot of essay writing and research project-based writing. The feedback is generally written, just standard old school, written on the paper feedback, and then also I definitely try to incorporate meetings with me one-on-one. So sometimes when they're working on their papers, I will call students up, ones that have finished. One thing we've done is that we have, once they've finished their first draft, I'll take a look at it and give feedback, and they'll do some peer review editing, and while they're doing that, I'll meet one-on-one with the students and go over some of my feedback. So I do try to incorporate talking to them about it, not just handing back a lot of paper with a lot of red written all over it. And one thing I've learned in my internship also is definitely touched on in the readings, is that don't just mark up the paper with a lot of reading. You have to really target, especially with ELLs. One of my difficulties with grading their papers was there's so much that can be corrected on it, and how do you choose? So talking to my mentor and other teachers, really learned, as they said in their reading, to focus on what was supposed to be addressed during the lesson, and then maybe 1 or 2 things that the student is making mistakes on across the board. So if they're I don't know, one time we were helping them, they were learning to do quotations, and if they, across the board, the next paper, when the student wasn't capitalizing correctly or putting things in quotations correctly, I pointed that out to them. But you can't just mark up every article that's left out, and it's, first of all, very time consuming for you and very frustrating for them to get back a paper like that. And so I certainly will address some of the larger issues for them. And again, like I said, I do it in writing, and then I do it one-on-one feedback. So I guess more the method that was discussed in the Reynolds book on the one-on-one, which I know is mostly geared towards tutors. But I guess not. I guess it says teachers also on the book. Yeah, I guess I would say that I approach mostly the approach addressed in the Reynolds book, and not the other books, not the other readings. One of my issues or reactions to the collaborative writing style is that I have a very small classes. One is 8 students, one is 5. They're very highly individualistic. When I even give them pair work to do, they generally don't do it. They just sit at their desks and do it individually. And when they do it in pairs, there are some very strong personalities, and they seem to take over, and the other students are willing to let them. So I don't think that collaborative writing in that situation would work very well. There would be one dominant presence, and the other students wouldn't really get a say. And I honestly don't think my students would enjoy it. I don't think that they, just from seeing, I think you have to know your students to do something like that. Or maybe it's a matter of developing it from the very beginning, and then you get a different classroom. The classroom I'm dealing with right now is a classroom I took over for a few weeks towards the end of the year from a teacher. So her style is very much established, and I teach very similar to that because that's what the students are used to. Not everything she does is the way I would set up my classroom, but I teach. But again, it's this is what the students know. And knowing these students, I don't think a collaborative writing as described in Hervala would work at all for them. So I stick with the more traditional, but I do try to be positive. I always try to give positive feedback. Where they did a good job, I tell them they did a great job, and then point out some of the errors. And I do have them do peer review. I think it's helpful to the person doing the reviewing, not necessarily to the person getting the critique. But I think the person reviewing it helps them see more in depth what the rubric looks like. It lets them see what other people's writing, which may be either better or worse than their own writing. I don't know if the students' feedback is always useful. A lot of them don't want to criticize their peers too much, so they'll mark things that very lightly. Yeah, so but I do find it very useful exercise for the students. So that's how it is. I think the way I do it is very successful. The students really enjoy getting the positive feedback. It helps them to look at the other feedback better, and they tend to ask me a lot of questions about what did I mean by this, how could they change that better. So I definitely think it's working. I think their writing has improved, and I also think that getting them to ask questions about how they can improve is a good thing. And I also model, again, like Reynolds, I model. So when I try to teach about a thesis statement, I always say, it's me, giving me as a reader the roadmap. When I read your paper, this is what I'm looking for. When you're writing for the reader, when you're writing for someone, you have to spell it out. You have to be detailed. So I try to put them in the shoes of the reader and get an idea of how to write with the reader in mind. So those are some of the things I do. I think they're working. I think the students are improving. And I look forward to hearing people's comments. Thank you.